Hello, hello. Snuggle up with your favorite firearm. We're about to embark on a magnificent adventure. Welcome to BS session number 6.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, ballistically speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.
Might need to spice that intro up a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think is missing?
I don't know. It just needs something more visual. Audio wise, it's great.
Well, I think you have something in the works that'd do quite nicely.
Well, I got lots of things on the go, when I got 5 seconds of time, but
right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome. We're here tonight with Graeme from Taranaki Long Range Shooting in New Zealand, where it's already tomorrow.
It's already tomorrow.
Well, it's 1:00 Saturday there.
We're talking to you from the future. Well, we're talking to you from the past, but
I'll say hello to the nice people, Graeme.
Hello, everybody.
The people say nothing back.
This is people say nothing back. I get that a lot too.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad about it.
Is it time to let everybody know who brought us here?
I think it might be.
Is it time to play the new epic intro for our sponsors?
Oh, let's try this. We didn't rehearse this. I'm a little bit nervous.
Are you nervous now? It's a simple click of a button here, but out in viewer land, you guys are in for a treat right about now.
That is absolutely brilliant.
It looks more cheesy every time I watch it.
All right, everybody. Along with other sponsors, great sponsors, we're brought to you tonight by Callsign 66. If you're just starting out in the precision shooting world or want to refine the skills you already possess, or are you looking for guidance to take your job to the next level? Book a training session now with Callsign 66. Collaboration and contribution are vital to team success. For upcoming training dates and to find out more about the Callsign 66 team, go to callsign66.ca. Welcome to the Brotherhood.
We are also brought to you by Odell Engineering, the geniuses behind the Canuck line of firearms. Odell Engineering is your premium importer and distributor of some of Canada's top brands of firearms, including Bergara, Rock Island Armory, Mission First Tactical, Hyperfire, and of course, the Made for Canada Canuck firearms. Find their products and the supporting dealer at OdellEngineeringLTD.com, on Facebook at Odell Engineering Ltd, or walk into your local gun store and tell them Phil sent you.
And some of our other amazing sponsors is EM Precision Rifles in Leduc, Alberta, building Canada's finest precision firearms. Commission a build today at emprifles.ca.
And Bolt Action Coffee, bringing specialty coffee to the precision shooting world. Order coffee and merchandise at boltactioncoffee.com.
Apex Optics. When you buy Apex, precision comes standard. Find them at apexoptics.co and grab yourself a Rival 4-32 rifle scope and get on the mailing list for more exciting products coming soon. We have a video.
Yes.
Detailing exactly that, don't we?
An update from approximately 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Yes.
2 weeks ago.
I'm glad we figured that out. And Ribstone Gunsmithing, craftsmanship done right. Contact Oscar at ribstonegunsmithing.ca and breathe life back into any firearm.
Mark Scopes Canada, the Dion optical design line of rifle scopes, has a scope for all your hunting and shooting needs. Find Doug and Niza at markscopes.ca.
And we would finally we would like to announce that we have struck a partnership with TriggerTech Canada. Look for future announcements and offers coming from TriggerTech in the future.
Bueno.
Speaking of the future,
yes.
How are things tomorrow, Graeme?
Great. We've actually not torrential rain here today, so the weather's improved slightly from the last few weeks.
You've been getting a lot of rain lately?
Yeah, quite a bit, about 240 mils or something in the last this month. In this month, yeah, a bit. It's our winter, so
yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotcha. Yeah,
but pretty wet.
Well, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
As mentioned, I'm Graeme. I run Taranaki long range shooting and Precision Unloaded podcast and website and everything. I do social media stuff, as whatever that means. You know, pictures, videos. I do a little bit of reviews and that stuff, and then we host precision rifle events here in New Zealand, sort of major national level 22 and centerfire events. Yeah.
How big is long range shooting down in New Zealand?
Excluding competitions, it's big because of the hunting aspect. It's similar to you guys. It's becoming more popular to take game at distance, and some areas of the country that's helpful in the mountains and such. So that side of it, you get a lot of them wanting to do it, and then in the competition side, it's pretty popular. I mean, it's still a small subsection of shooting in New Zealand,
right?
Hunting being the biggest, but yeah, the events sell out and all of that. And
so how many? Right on. How many shooters would you get to an event?
We try not to do more than 48, just to keep the day moving. We don't like to fill it up. 48. So that's usually a good number we like to stick to. Otherwise, things can be a bit difficult. Yeah.
All right. And do you do most of your, like, you're on the North Island? You do most of your shooting down there? Do you get the opportunity to travel down to the South Island, down to Christchurch area and all that?
I try and so there's another set of sort of different competitions down south, South Island. So we don't really have the big series as such, like in the States and Canada. So I try to head down once or twice a year, depending whether like we get locked in our house, by the government or not, can sort of make things hard. But yeah, I try to, and then we try to go down there for a bit of hunting too. Yeah.
I noticed you said a lot of 22 competition up there on the North Island. I know Jens, one of our listeners, would be very upset if I didn't ask you about the 22 competitions. Is that pretty big? Is it getting bigger? Or Jens loves 22.
22. I love 22 also. It's more so than centerfire some days. It's getting bigger. We're working on with it. A friend of mine runs another sort of shooting organizer. We're doing a series of competitions this year that are linked with a final and everything. So that's pushing a lot more interest into it. Now there's a bit of a series. And and we're trying to use the 22s as a way to bring in new shooters into the sport. We have a class, what we call hunter class, and it's only goes to 100 meters. And the rifles are sort of limited to, like, you couldn't compete with your Voodoo or your tricked out CZ. It's meant to be for like what you'd grow up shooting bunnies with or that kind of thing. So no dialing. You're maybe allowed a BDC reticle. And the idea is that they come into this class and they're not like intimidated by, $5,000-$10,000 22s and they can be competitive. So that's the idea there. And then we've got a rifleman class, which is any 22 long rifle, any scope, any weight, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Our buddy Jens.
He wants to get political right away, I guess.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they can still shoot over there. Don't they have that female Trudeau over there? Jens adores Trudeau almost as much as he adores 22 rimfire. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting very sarcastic now. Probably too sarcastic for people to. Jens is like, I like 22. Too sarcastic for even Jens to pick up on it. Well, that's actually kind of a cool idea. So you guys go up to 100 meters with 22s. It's basically like production gun stuff, and the idea is to introduce new shooters and then kind of through that kind of get them interested in like the center fire, longer range stuff.
Yeah. Centerfire, when I first started shooting competitions here in New Zealand, you'd see a lot of maybe 2016, 15, 16. You'd see a lot of like standard, like Tikas are very, very popular here. I imagine you have
Okay.
Tika, like stupid popular. And you'd see a lot of Tikas with maybe like a basic dialing hunting scope. But now in the centerfire game, you don't see anything that's not a race gun, essentially. So guys don't want to turn up new shooters don't want to turn up because they're intimidated or they don't want to spend that coin.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's also a hunter class in centerfire as well, but with a similar idea. Just to try and first of all make it affordable-ish, but people assume they have to go out and build a big expensive gun to compete.
Yeah, I think we're afflicted with the same kind of thing here too, and it's becoming more popular. And like Big Brother Next Door with all the shooting competitions down in the States, there's so much focus on gear now, and we've talked about the gear race on several occasions, and it's nice to know that there's still some opportunity out there for any Joe to compete with what he's got. There used to be some, actually quite a lot of that, but it seems to have faded away sort of recently around here again. But we do have different classes for a lot of the disciplines. Whether Chris, I think. Well, no, I guess with Maple Seed, there is only one class, right?
Well, Maple Seed's not really a competition though either.
Well, no,
it's more of just a training program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But there's production class and what do they call it? Open class, I guess, and then open class with different weights depending on like NRL.
For like CRPS, hunter. You mean?
Well, no, I'm talking broadly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Even in rimfire, some of the competitions, there's a stock class or
yeah. It sounds like what we're calling production class, you guys would call hunter's class, right?
Kind of. We also have weight limits and restrictions on bags, tripods, slings, and well, not so much slings, but stuff like that. So it's its own sort of organic New Zealand thing. We also have we have hunter, which usually goes out in centerfire, say goes out to about 350, maybe 400 meters. More unsupported shooting, like bit of standing, kneeling.
That sounds awesome.
It is, and then we have practical class, which is, and then we have open. So practical and open are the same course of fire. Open's allowed any gear, full on race guns, tripods, whatever they want. Practical, you're allowed whatever rifle, scope, bipod, no tripod, no what we call gamer bags. So like no game changers or anything. You're allowed a small, like 150 millimeter square sort of bag with no curve in it. And then so the idea is the same thing that's that class that's out to 1,000 meters or 1,200 or 700, whatever. Same barricades, everything same times, but a slightly altered course of fire sometimes, and then no tripods. And so if there's no prop, you're shooting off your knees or you're offhand standing, unsupported, and stuff like that. Yeah,
and what division is that?
That's practical.
Practical division.
So we're real big, like the majority of the events here in the North Island, what we more call practical rifle. And so we try and bring some stuff back to like kind of into hunting scenarios or, less like fun games, more like we don't like sit in kayaks and row them and shit like that because we don't do that. So yeah, it's a bit more what we try and theme as practical and hunting scenarios, and then we get the defense force, our army sends along people to compete because it's a practical application for them also, rather than like gamer style shooting. Yeah, you do get events with the more game style stuff as well.
Okay.
And then what's kind of the longest distance that you guys end up going out to, regardless of class?
And like standard sort of competition we're talking about, my longest is events I run is 1,200 meters, I think. And then And my friend who runs the one who I work with a lot, GPRE events, they do one out to 1400.
Okay.
And, oh, sorry, we do one out to 1400 sometimes too, but we style that more to magnums.
Okay.
You know, like up to 338 Lapua, and then maybe like 65 PRC, 300 PRC Win Mag, and all that stuff. Yeah, because it's yeah. So we do.
Is it pretty easy to find a 1.4 kilometer spot that you can shoot in New Zealand?
At the moment, yes, but there's some incoming legislation that's going to make it harder.
Really?
Around. So we shoot on private property for the most part. We don't really shoot on like what you call a square range. We shoot in the hills and farms essentially. And we try use, and they're not flat farms. They're sort of big hills, and some people might call them mountains. We call them hills. They're only half-size ones. But yeah, so it can be hard, and it's going to get harder. But we'll work around it as best we can.
Why? What's coming down?
They want each range to be certified. So it's essentially approved by the police commissioner.
Well, but it's not a range. It's strictly a farm, and you occasionally put targets up.
Mate, how it was written was if the primary use of the land is shooting, it's a range.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's a farm, but the police have interpreted it as soon as you start shooting, you've changed the primary purpose.
Fucker.
Which is I'm hoping we've got like our sort of legal representation in New Zealand for firearms owners called COLFO. I'm hoping we can challenge it legally, but we'll see. But we're more so hoping for a change of government next year. Which is looking likely.
That should go without saying. I think that dipshit's been in there long enough.
You're not just shooting either. It's everything.
Everything.
Quite literally everything. Yeah. What do you think will happen to your guys' semi-auto ban if Ardern is thrown out?
In the night, we've got classes of license. I'm not sure if you guys are similar. We have the standard license is called A class or A category, which was semi-automatic centerfire with no more than 7-round mags, no military style features such as flash hiders, freestanding pistol grips, and like forward grips, like really dumb, like
Jesus
Christ.
Yeah.
And then you had like
hang on, I'm sorry, I just need to appreciate for a moment that you need a special class of license to have a foregrip on your rifle.
Oh yeah. And then so ACAT also includes,
you're making me feel better about Canada right now. That hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah. But you also all your standard sort of bolt action rifles are in there. And for rimfire, you're allowed up to 15 rounds in the centerfire. Rimfire, and then magazine. There's no restriction on non-semi-automatic magazines. And then you had B category, which is competitive pistol shooting. So we're not allowed any defensive firearms in New Zealand. And so you could have this license called B category. You could shoot your handguns at a approved pistol club only. So you couldn't use them on your farm or anything.
Yeah.
And then you have C category, which is machine guns, rocket launchers, mortars, and all that stuff. They can function. You're not allowed to use them, but they can function. Weird. Anyway, that's good. I've got that license.
At least you can have them. We can't even have them unless you get a very special license. Like they're prohibited for almost everyone. So
and then we had what was called E category, which was sporting and pest control semi-automatics. So the B, C, and E are quite hard to get. You got to jump through a few hoops. And so the ECAT was you could have an AR-15, essentially anything you wanted, non-select fire. So
non-select fire. Okay.
Like
but didn't you say semi-automatics in the A class?
Yes, but they were restricted to 7 rounds mag capacity and those visual features.
So a different class of license allows you the same firearm with different features and different magazine capacities and different usage.
Yes. So the ECAT, the semi-automatics, you could use them on private property. So we'd use them for, like I mentioned off camera, we have got a feral goat sort of issue. So a lot of us had them because these big mobs of feral goats, they were quite effective in dealing to those for the farmers. And then for sports shooting. So you couldn't just get this license without a reason. You'd have to prove, like, hey, listen, I cull on these farms, or I'm a competitive shooter.
Wow.
But
And like
that's-
self-declaration isn't enough. Like what was the burden of proof if you said that you
I
were...
identify as someone who needs to shoot a bunch of
Yeah.
Well, it was easy. It was easy for me because I shoot competitively. Because again, this license is now gone. But then I live rural, and if you look out, sometimes you can see the feral goats on the farm. So I had no issue obtaining this. And then after we had the terrorist attack in 2019, and they banned semi-automatic centerfire rifle in about 2 days with no real due process. But anyway, they took E category off me. Yeah, so that license that was very, very hard to get, and you're extremely well vetted. They just took it and said no more. Yeah.
So then, like, there's that whole surrender thing, or I don't know whether they actually went through a buyback process or attempted to, or whatever. I think they did, didn't they?
So they did a buyback that took about maybe 9 months to a year,
right?
To actually start. So you had to, similar to you guys, store these things. You weren't allowed to play with them, and then they opened up they sent through a list, and because they had to consult like what models, and obviously the AR-15s were very, very popular. SKSs, do you know what SLR? They probably called it FNFAL.
Yep.
You were allowed to have those before?
Yep, heaps of them. So the New Zealand Defence Force had them, and in the late 80s, they surplused them onto the civilian market.
Something similar happened in Canada, only they took them away from civilians.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, and they
because our forces had them as well.
Yeah, they're very, very like from ex-servicemen, and they love them. They're I didn't own one. I'd shot one plenty. They're a wicked rifle.
I wish I knew what it was like.
No
As crazy as it sounds, I'd have to come visit you or go to the US to shoot one.
Well, not now. You can't shoot one in New Zealand now without.
Oh, true. So I'd have to go to the US.
Right.
Yeah. And then SKSs come in and just absolute stupid numbers. And so they released a list of all these semi-automatics, and then a bunch of shotguns got pulled in under that. If they had semi-automatic shotguns weren't banned, but you couldn't have more than a 5-round tube, and there was no detachable box magazines allowed on semi-automatics after that ban, and rimfire semi-automatics were then limited to 10-shot mags, and centerfire
instead of
bolt
15.
action. Yes, and centerfire bolt action stuff was limited to 10 as well, which sucked because we just started getting the 12-round MDT mags for competitions,
right.
and they become assault rifle mags, so we had to surrender them under the threat of imprisonment. Yeah.
Under the threat of imprisonment. That's
pretty much.
Yeah.
But so you could get caught with it if you were a non-firearms license holder. You can get caught with whatever, and you'll get maybe home detention or something, maybe a month in jail. But if you're a license holder, you got caught with something that was now prohibited, like it was massive fines and 5 years in jail and all sorts of shit.
Yeah, that sounds similar to the minimum mandatory sentences for gun crimes. They as much as eliminated them. But if we get caught out with one of our prohibited weapons now, which used to be restricted, what we called restricted, some of the ARs were restricted. Some of them, actually, a lot of them that came through that OIC in May 2020. They were non-restricted. They went straight to the fucking prohibited list.
Yeah.
If God help me, if I was caught out at the farm or whatever, out at my range, shooting an M305 Norinco, I don't know what the hell I'd face, but I'd get a hell of a lot more than some asshole that went and knocked over a fucking convenience store with an illegal gun.
Yeah, that's the same here.
Well, and that's the big question. What have crime stats been like in New Zealand since? Because you guys had it for about a year, a little more than a year longer before our order and council came in that took ours away.
Yeah. So crime, it's not so much our legal guns been taken away because they weren't used for defense or anything, but it's
Right.
several other issues, but firearms crime has gone through the roof in New Zealand.
Has it seriously?
Is that
During
right?
this government's 2 terms. So it's a bit off topic, but Australia and New Zealand have a very close relationship. So I can go to Australia and live there with no paperwork. I can just turn up there and get a job. There's no restrictions on me.
Wasn't it something that the terrorist in Christchurch, wasn't he from Australia?
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'll get back to that because that's
okay. Yeah.
but so anyway, if I went to New Zealand as a young child and Australia and grew up there and become a crim, started committing crimes, I act like an Australian. I've been raised there, but legally I'm still a Kiwi. So a few years back, they started going, "Hey, wait a minute, we've got all these shitheads committing crimes, and they're not actually Australian citizens. We can deport them." So they started deporting all these different crims and gang members back to New Zealand, and they were essentially Australians by all intents and purposes, been raised as, the Australian.
They're only New Zealanders by legal status.
Yeah, and so, but the crime in Australia is a few notches up from New Zealand, as in gun crime and murder, and these things are far less serious for these gangs compared to our domestic gangs. And
isn't that impossible since most guns are banned in Australia?
Yeah, so they started coming back
fascinating.
Here. They lifted the level of crime quite rapidly because things that our conventional gangs wouldn't really fuck around with, these guys didn't care about. So shootings have gone through the roof, drive-bys, it's gone bad, mostly in places like Auckland or the East Coast. Not so much
right.
But,
go ahead.
Then the police are a little bit, from what I understand, I got a lot of friends in police, as in not police management, but there seems to be a thing that they're worried about escalating the repercussions for having a firearm. This is how I see it. So if you get caught with a firearm, it's not too big of a deal. Like, oh, you shouldn't really have one, and you get a bit of it. Nothing, right? But if it was like minimum 10 years jail, they're worried that the criminals will start shooting back at the police more often and escalating because we don't get too much of that, right? So we don't have armed police, don't have armed police. But recently, due to this uprise in gun crime, we are getting more police shot. We're having more people trying to kill police, and they're not often armed. So it's that. I think they're a bit panicked, and the criminals just don't.
There's a lot of incentive there to be an officer, hey?
Well, yeah, they're low paid and
right.
No. Now I think it's every other police vehicle has firearms, but they're locked in the boot. So they've got they call an M4, but it's a Bushmaster AR-15, soon to be replaced with LMTs. And they've got Glocks, but they haven't got them on them all the time unless they perceive a need. I could be slightly wrong on that. But
really?
They don't just carry all the time here in New Zealand.
So they have access, but they don't carry a sidearm with them.
Yeah, but you might get shot before you get your gun.
I was just going to say, yeah,
that's awesome.
When you need your sidearm, it's only 12 feet away in the trunk of the car,
right? And a locked box.
So inside the boot.
In the trunk.
I believe so, yeah. Because we've had a few police cars stolen too, right? I mean, it's, I guess a normal thing.
Sure.
So you kind of don't want them to open the boot and be like, oh, fucking sweet, So I believe it's an alum like a stainless box. I've seen it once, but
good Lord.
After you stole the car?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm glad we segued into this, and I'm more than happy to continue talking about it. But originally I was wondering, what do you think the odds were that a lot of these gun laws that Arjun passed would get overturned if she's ousted? Like, is the party that's predicted to take over, are they sensible or?
So we don't have. I think you guys run like two major parties, and then they sort of
that's more the US. Yeah, we've got several. Yeah.
So we have coalitions too. So very rarely will a government be formed by one party. So the current government had enough. They had 51 or 52% majority, so they're able to rule alone. But usually you'll get like 40%, and a minor party will bring it up the same. So we've got one party. We've got National, which is, we don't really have conservative. we're not as conservative in New Zealand as most countries, right? So even what you consider the right party, it's less conservative than most of the world, is how I said. But and then you've got another part. They're okay, but they flipped on us real quick in the gun ban. They supported that, and they seem to think we've forgotten about that. But that's fine. And then we've got another party who opposed it. In the next election, they went from 1 MP to 10. With there's 250,000 license holders in New Zealand, which there's not a lot of people, but in a country of 5 million.
5 million, yeah, that's a lot percentage-wise.
Yeah, and 5 million can't vote, right? Only say 4 million can vote or whatever it is.
Right.
Kids and shit. So that's a bit. And so the idea is that they've currently got enough in polling and have for a while to form a coalition in the next election. So now the one that supports legal use of firearms, and like they're not saying we're going to give you all guns for self-defense and such, but there has been some talk, again, occasionally, that the E category license would hopefully come back, which is the Semiautomatics. But again, you've got to have legitimate reason. I don't think the public would stomach just to have these all back. So, so sporting and pest control essentially is what I'm hopeful we will get back.
It seems as though, and not just in firearms, but it seems as though, at least right now, both you guys and Australia have developed a pretty progressive population. Like is at least that's what it seems like on this side of the pond. Is it pretty similar where you guys are? Like, is that the right impression? Or
yeah, we seem to ebb and flow. When times are well, people are a bit more progressive and liberal and happy to vote for the free money and all that shit. And then, as most of the world, times get tough at the moment, and there's a heap of real stupid policy which compounds the problems. And that centre block seems to move back towards hey, wait a minute, I want more of my money in my pocket, and I don't want you spending it on whatever. So we seem to ebb and flow. So farmers, obviously, we're a big farming country, massive farming country. They generally will stick on that just off right of centre. But a lot of them in the last election turned and went a little bit the other way. So it just changes. And after the previous election, so I don't know if you remember, we didn't really get COVID, and our
right,
leaders,
fuck off.
She was up standing on the pedestal, telling everyone we're better than everyone. And
what you did get is a very healthy dose of authoritarianism, very quickly.
We got a bit of that, which proved was legally illegal. And so, but when you've got a majority in government, you can just change the law afterwards.
Exactly.
Make it legal. But
sue the government, and they can defend themselves with your money.
Yeah, and but after, so we didn't get it. Well, we're a long way from anywhere, right? We're at the bottom of the world. We have no other countries on our borders. Blah blah blah. So they just essentially shut the borders. What little COVID we have, they just locked us in our house for 5-6 weeks, and couldn't leave. We get arrested, and it went right. And so everyone was sort of like, "Oh my god, she saved us." Cool. And it was nice not having. It was nice not having COVID, right? Because we then had a year and a half of everyone else is in lockdown. We're just doing whatever we normally do. We're just fucking about and Kiwis, apart from no tourism, which is
just no tourism,
which is again a huge thing for us. But when it come in, it come back in pretty hard, and they tried to lock us down again, and it didn't work, and blah blah blah, and more and more businesses got shut, as similar to everywhere, and then now the fuel starts rising, and they won't accept any responsibility for anything. They sort of blame previous governments, and they blame the US, and they blame Russia, and they blame whatever. But standard shit. Of course. So that shine is worn off, and when they first got into power in the initial, nearly 5 years ago, they said, we're going to be the most open and transparent government ever.
Oh, fuck yeah.
You want to know about it?
That sounds very familiar.
Wow.
And it lasted about a week and a half, because they did their coalition deal with the party that essentially put them in power, the small party that fucked us. They wouldn't release it. No, we're not releasing that shit, no. So it started from day one, and it's just got worse and worse. And a big heap failed big projects and shit like that. A lot of money down the drain, and a lot of people.
Well, there's a lot of it for the government to spend. Like it just keeps coming in. You just keep
Yeah, it
rolling
just keeps
over.
coming in until inflation hits 9% every month.
Yeah, well, then
We're
they
at
just print
we're
more.
at just over 7% already. So
I think we were averaging probably somewhere between 7 and 8%, but
Mhm.
I think we had a couple of months where we broke 9, didn't we?
ooh,
I'm not sure. I know I just 7.6 sticks in my head as a figure that I'd heard.
That was
a
probably
while
the
ago.
average. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So with the inflation, they've also done so. Like, oh yeah, inflation sucks, but we're going to raise everyone's minimum wage to counter it, which pushes up inflation, and then they're going to or have another public holiday that all the businesses have to pay for. Which
It's
rises
funny.
inflation.
We're so far away, but so many things you're saying are just like
Same fucking
exactly what's going on. Yeah, it's very interesting.
We
And
get the
I suppose
feeling-
it begs Bruce's question here. He's asking is your government WEF influence too? From what I see of Ardern when she's talking, she sure seems to be on board with that whole WEF New World Order sort of thing.
Yeah. But she's losing popularity pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to be. They want to introduce a bunch of hate speech laws.
We already did that.
As does our fucking toad.
Yeah. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it better, right? Because we know better. And
Yeah.
They got asked. Well, what is it? Well, you'll know it when you hear it. And they're like, what does that mean? And then they were quizzing the minister in charge of it, who's since left, which is quite good. He was pretty good, but he got put in this shitty position. They're going, well, would what you've written technically criticizing the opposition, criticizing the government could be considered hate speech? And he's like, oh, maybe it could. And he's all confused on the interview and stuff like that. So they're not the smartest. So you've got Ardern's very popular, and she's got a couple ministers that are like maybe half intelligent, and then the rest of their party is just absolute.
So similar.
I think
no life experience. They're just straight out of university into politics.
Right. I think if Ardern and Trudeau got together and had an affair and they had a child, I think you could probably legitimately call that child the Antichrist.
Yeah, I think so.
I have a feeling
the most devious little fuck you've ever run across.
She seems pretty similar, and
same playbook, man.
It's
really
crazy. Like that's what I'm saying. Like we're so far apart from each other, but our leaders, I put that in air quotes, seem so dramatically similar to each other in how they're trying to run their countries.
And we are your savior. We are here for your own good.
Well, that's the only difference.
Like you're a complete fucking idiot.
We didn't go quite as far when you guys had the trucker.
You guys had no trucker convoy?
No, we had a convoy head down to Wellington, which is our capital, which is the bottom of the North Island, essentially halfway. That's the idea. And they said it was like a few hundred, but it was several thousand. I don't know the exact number, but packed out in front of the Beehive, which is our Parliament building. It's this horrible thing, and that got out of hand, and it went on for like a month. And they were just
really?
Yeah, they had some pretty good.
But did they get
down there?
Did they get out of hand though? Like, were they?
No, well, they at the start they turned all the sprinklers on the This is the Speaker of the House turned the sprinklers on and started blaring. James Blunt, the British singer.
Yeah.
They started playing this music real loud, and these protesters all just started dancing in the water. It got out of hand, man, and they ended up building they bought in portaloos, and they built it was like a festival in the end of these guys, and it lasted about a month. And
so they basically they took that page out of the U.S. Army's playbook where they used to like blare AC/DC 24 hours a day into the mountains in Afghanistan, and they tried to do James Blunt, and everyone was just like, "Yeah, this is my jam,
bring it."
Yeah. In the end, they most of them were pretty well behaved too. I wasn't there protesting. I don't care, but people can make their own decisions. That's how I view things. If they're not affecting me, go ahead, right? And then, but they had it seemed pretty good. And I think there's a few sort of people who were just more anti-authoritarianism and just wanted to go there and cause trouble. And then in the end, the police come in large numbers because they couldn't do anything at the start because there's just too many people, and they tried to push them out. And then some people started like throwing bricks and throwing handfuls of shit at the police.
Oh yeah.
And then the
shoving
police come in.
happens.
Yeah, they come in heavy, and shit all got lit on fire. All the tents, it was chaos.
That is kind of the problem. Hey, you've got there's a fine line between being anti-authoritarian and being anarchist. And it only takes a handful of anarchists to ruin the whole party for the anti-authoritarians.
Yeah, whether they were, because the issue stemmed around saying, I hate to talk about it, but if you didn't have a vaccine, there's a whole bunch of jobs you couldn't do, and they essentially were losing their jobs, and that was what it was. And so these people went down there, and that went on. But and they banned like other opposition politicians from speaking to the protesters, so the government wouldn't speak to them. And
there's democracy working for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking right.
Anyway, it got out of hand, but the government didn't come out of it looking well. One thing that happened was, do you have a tomb of an unknown soldier in Canada from the First World War? Do you have that?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So that's in Wellington at the War Memorial, and I imagine just like you guys, that's a sort of sacred site for everybody in New Zealand, regardless of race or religion. That's
Same deal.
It's the exact same thing. The protesters set up camp there, and the police couldn't move them off. And then our veterans organisation put out a warning, like, we're coming tomorrow morning to remove you from the tomb of the unknown soldier. And then that's
good for them.
And that was the only thing again, they could do what they want outside Parliament, but being there, that's not a place you. And they had showers and shit set up. It wasn't very nice. Yeah, and they literally said, we're going to remove you, and they fucked off really quick because you don't want to.
Good, we had a very a much less. I mean, of course, our media blew it very out of proportion, but we had a similar thing. They were. Our mainstream media was talking about how people were disrespecting our war memorial that is essentially right across. It's kind of like in a triangular intersection, essentially across the street from our Parliament building. And they were saying that they were disrespecting that war memorial, but at the same time, when you're not listening to the media, when you're talking to people who are actually there, it didn't really happen. And there wasn't a whole lot going on. It seems like the worst thing that happened is somebody put a cape around a statue of, have you ever heard of Terry Fox?
No.
So he's a Canadian, I don't know what you would call him even. I mean, obviously celebrity, but
he's an icon.
Yeah. Icon. There you go. In the 1980s, he got cancer, and he literally ran across the country with cancer. He made it like 2/3 of the way across the country before he ended up essentially succumbing to cancer. And he had already had a leg amputated before he even started running. So he's like, obviously like very, very well respected and loved in Canada. And there's a statue of him in Ottawa. Somebody put a cape on it, and kind of just an asshole move, to be perfectly honest with you. But by the same token, if that's as far out of hand as things got.
Yeah. But it was kind of funny though that you remember the Pride parade that went through there some years ago. They put a pride flag on them, and nobody said boo.
And that was no problem.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is the double standard,
Very much.
But yeah. Are you guys still under restrictions?
We did for a while, but it got to the point where everyone just started ignoring most things. So all we have left now, I think, is some shops you have to wear a mask in, like supermarkets. Do you call it a supermarket? We buy
supermarket.
Food. And then like big like what you like Target. We don't have that sort of shops. You wear that, and then shops can request if they can request you wear one. And if they request it, I'll wear it. It's their business. But other than that, like at work where I work in engineering, we don't wear them there or anything.
It kind of seems like that's the way it should have been done from the beginning. If a business decides that they want you to wear it while you're in their business, well, that's their prerogative. But
exactly, because it's their business. Yeah,
right.
And if you have a problem with that, shop somewhere else. But
vote with your feet. Exactly.
Other than that, because it's so again, we didn't get it until recently,
Mhm.
at the end of last year, maybe September. And so we've it sort of shocked us a bit because we weren't used to it. And they put a bunch of restrictions, and you had to scan into every building you went in with your phone and all that shit. And then, but once it got out of hand, I thought, "Fuck, there's nothing we can do about this now." And everyone's just back to normal. Yeah.
I'll let us segue back into guns really quickly here, but I just want to say that I find it very interesting that there is ample examples in history of isolated populations being eventually and inevitably exposed to bacteria, viruses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and how their immune systems, because of their isolation, become unable to handle those things. And I mean, New Zealand is literally just, New Zealand and Australia are just two examples of that. I mean, there's Hawaii, there's multiple examples in Southeast Asia, you know, there's so many examples of this throughout history. And so then finally a modern time comes along, and what do? Oh, let's just isolate ourselves for several years or a year and kill our immune systems. And then it's inevitably going to come to us anyways, because it's futile to be able to completely cut ourselves off from the rest of the world. And then we'll be surprised when it runs rampant across our island. It just, I don't know, it just blows my mind. But anyway, let's talk some more about guns.
Yeah, sure.
What do you shoot when you compete?
Centerfire, for the most part, I use I'm quite big on not using, well, I say that, but like I use factory guns, and then I essentially just put them in a chassis. So I shoot a Hauer. I guess you get Hauer. And,
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Hauer 6mm Creed. And then I've got that in an MDT ESS chassis. Man,
MDT really is worldwide now, aren't they?
They are very big in New Zealand. That's the biggest precision rifle accessory brand in here by far. Yeah.
I think they are in the whole world now.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Done well.
Oh, very well. They've been popular here for quite a while too. Yeah, and same with those new lightweight hunting stocks. We've got one of those here. Because that side of things super popular here in New Zealand. Lightweight hunting equipment.
Hunt 26 or whatever.
Yep. And so I shoot that the 6mm Creed, and then also I've got a Bagara. Started off as a B14 HMR. And then I rebarreled that. I burnt the barrel out essentially. And then, if you're familiar with Hardy Rifle Engineering, it's pretty big. Yep. They put a new barrel on it for me, a Hardy barrel. So they make their own barrels, and then they make guns and stuff too.
And Hardy is in New Zealand?
Yeah, it's about 3 hours down the road.
Is that right? Okay. There's
cool.
What is it? Inside Arms here. Gets a lot of Hardy barrels. Yeah.
Yep. So do you get the rifles they make also?
No, I haven't seen or read or heard of any of them. It's just the barrels.
Yep. And they're a very big suppressor manufacturer too. Which obviously for you guys is, so they make rifles, barrels, suppressors, all sorts. Yep. And so you've got that 6.5 Creed, the Hardy barreled Bagara, and then that's in a MDT XRS crossover.
Okay. Right.
Yep. And then for 22s, I have a Tika T1X and a, funny enough, MDT LSS chassis. And then I've got I'm sort of sponsored kind of a Voodoo 360, which is what I'm using mostly at the moment. Like I said, I like to use these cheap, easy to get guns, and then I shoot a Voodoo for 22. So
right.
But I didn't think I'd like it as much as I do, but it's good.
What is the cost of a Voodoo down there?
So this is one of the come in the grey bow stock, like a sort of crossover thing. It's about.
You guys are using grey bows too, hey?
Not a lot. So this come in as in that stock already. So that was about 6,000 New Zealand for that.
Oh wow!
Then,
no kidding.
Yeah, about 6.5. Yeah. So
I remember when
5,000 Canadian.
Had him on the show. He's got some pretty good stocks, I think.
He does, yeah. I have one on that 6.5 Rooster of mine.
Is that a grey bow that you have on there?
It is, yeah.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I just did some work to it and made it look pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think here you can get a Voodoo barreled action for about $2,300 or something Canadian.
Yeah.
and then stock or chassis or whatever on top of that. I think I got my Graybo for $550 or near $600 or something.
Yeah.
So
I think just everything here because they've got to ship it. So someone's got to because we don't have a Voodoo outlet here, so they've got someone's got to buy them, ship them, and then add on 20% to make it worth their while.
Sure. Bottom
of the world. Like God, people I know moan about it, how much we pay, but it's like we're a long way from anywhere, so you just the reality. But it's a good gun. I like the Voodoo. I've got it feeding pretty good now, and it's pretty good. Yeah.
I've heard there was some either feeding or extraction issue. I thought it was feeding issues with the Voodoo a little bit.
It's the magazine. If you put any weight on the mag, like
that's
if you're running a barricade, it will It'll push it back and change the feed angle of the round. So what I do is I play with the feed angle a little bit in the magazine, and then I've put a barricade stop on the an arc rail with a barricade stop, and as long as I don't go past my barricade stop and my bag's not resting on it, it feeds good. And you've sort of got to stack your cartridges so the rim is in front of the one underneath it. So you don't. If you shot much 303, you got to sort of
same idea.
Exact same. It just helps a little bit.
Do you guys still have Enfields there? I have to ask.
Yeah,
I imagine they're just as popular as any Commonwealth country.
Yep.
Awesome.
You have some milsurp shoots down there too, don't you?
Yeah. So I've always what got me into firearms when I was a teenager was I liked New Zealand military history, right? First World War, Second World War, Vietnam, all that stuff. And so I bought an SKS because it was like 200 Kiwi dollars, and then I got like Mosins and all this shit, and there's heaps of it down here. But during the war, the First World War especially, Kiwis and Australians, we would steal everything that wasn't bolted down. We could, the actual. do you have a word called souvenir? That's an Australian New Zealand slang word from the First World War. So
really?
We would. It was souveniring. It was us stealing things, and it was just kind of word.
You turned it into a verb.
Yeah. It was, it was speaking French, but so we like heaps of Mausers and anything we could get, or like
that's awesome.
We'd take some prisoners, or we'd come across some equipment in the war, come home, right? And Lugers, there's a lot of Lugers and stuff like that, all come home. Less so in the Second World War because the government told us we weren't allowed to as much. Anyway, so then the 303s, so we used to use like the SMLE. Yeah. A lot of them either English made or Australian made, and then through the Second World War, we ran the SMLE. Well, the rest of the world, you included, was going to the number 4. You guys manufactured your own. Australia
branch,
exactly. Australia never patented to the number 4. They continued with the SMLE.
Right.
So after the war,
I didn't know that.
So after the war, Canada gave us a boatload of number 4s. So there's a heap. So not just and these didn't last that long before we started going to like SLRs and stuff. So all of that got surplus. All the SMLEs got surplus. The jungle carbines just got sold.
That was nice of us, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you used to imagine the same for you guys. You used to be able to buy before my day crates of 303 ammo for cents on the round, and
it was today's 7.62 by 51.
Yeah, and you'd buy it from talking to the old guys. They'd buy like a SMLE for $20 and a crate of ammo for $10, and then they'd just go and burn the ammo and just shoot it into the hills. And but 303 is very popular, and then because of all the introduced game animals in New Zealand, and back in the day, people didn't have the disposable income, right? So you couldn't buy at the time a modern sporting rifle. Not everybody, right? So people would get these 303s for cheap, and they'd remove the wood and they'd shorten the barrels, and they would what we call sporterizing.
Right. It's
called bubbering in the States, which is you fuck these things up, right? But
it's an apt description, that's for sure.
But at the time, they were just everywhere. There was didn't matter. They were worthless.
That was the same in Canada, by the way. I mean, of quite the way my grandfather used to tell the story, he was in the Navy during World War II. And the way he used to tell the story, he says, like, we got off the boat in Halifax and like they were just like lined up there. It's like, here, take one home with you. And they were already sporterized. Like it was just, it was like, now you can hunt with it. You carried it in the war. Now go home and hunt.
Yeah. And I mean, you needed something in Canada, didn't you, for hunting back then? Plenty of stuff that can kill you. But so that happened to a lot of this stuff. And it's part of our hunting and culling history in New Zealand is that those sporterized 303s. And then in like the 80s, I think they started getting like 222s and then later on like 223s because the colors could carry a lot more ammo. And then but now these firearms started becoming popular and worth some money. So 3.0s and Mausers, especially after the ban on semi-automatics, a lot of people put that money into surplus rifles. So there's a big interest in these things, and all the shooting sports that shot them are kind of the old-fashioned, what I'd call kind of a bit boring, like shooting paper targets and that kind of thing. And I don't like shooting paper; I like shooting steel. So for several years, I toyed with this idea of doing a practical rifle competition or a precision-style rifle competition, but with these rifles. So the rifle had to be in original condition, so you couldn't run a sporter, you couldn't run anything as issued. Essentially, we had a rifleman class. Sorry, we had an infantry class, and we had a marksman/sniper class. So if you did have a replica of an original sniper, or you had an original sniper, you were happy to bash around. And we dug trenches. We made fake grenades. One stage, you had grenades, like they're just bits of steel. You pull the pin and throw them through a window, and then you advance and shoot your targets. And
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, we made a target, and I was like, I wanted a long range. So it was like 380 meters for the infantry class. I thought I need to theme it. Like everything had a theme. Everything was combat. World War I, World War II, sort of everything had to have a theme. And I was like, I can't just put a big target down range because that doesn't make any sense. So what I did is I made a big plywood cutout of a tank, and then I cut a section out in the rear, like it was like the engine had been exposed, and there was an enemy tank. You had to take out the engine, like that. So that was how I. And then for the sniper class, there's the tank commander. He was up on the turret, a steel target. So and they didn't engage that. So everything was that, and we made fake machine guns that you had to drag around. And it was cool.
That's very cool.
So it was popular, and one of the good things about this event is it drew in a bunch of competitors we'd never seen before. So service rifle guys. And it was super popular, but it was a lot of work to organize.
I feel like going souveniring something now.
I don't want to kick over a hornet's nest here, but I have to ask. With you were mentioning that they restricted bolt action magazines. So what did everybody have to do with their Enfield magazines?
No, that's capacity. 10 is max
for manually operated.
Yeah, I don't know about the SMLE, but I know the number 4 magazines hold significantly more than 10 rounds of magazine. But I suppose it depends on what they're classified as. Hey.
Yeah, therefore, I imagine they probably looked at going to 5, and they probably thought, shit, there's a lot of 303s out there. This will cost us a fortune.
It's interesting you say that. Our current government is threatening the idea of limiting magazine capacity to 5 with all long guns. And not ignore the SMLE problem or the number 4 problem or whatever. You look at the Ruger 1022, for example. How do you alter a 1022 magazine, a rotary 1022 magazine? And Ruger's not even the only one with the rotary magazine issue. I mean, some Savages have rotary magazines. Winchester's making one that takes 1022 magazines now. It's quite a Pandora's box that they're threatening to open. But Yeah, I know. Wayne says, Mark IV and SMLE mags are both 10 rounds. Like, yeah, that's true. But I got one sitting on the top of the safe over here that holds 14.
Ooh.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Well, the springs are worn out. I can fit 14 in that. It's only reliable with 13, but I can fit 14. So.
Oh, that's funny.
But that's my actually that magazine that's there. That actually was my grandfather's magazine. That he did pick up a sporterized rifle in Halifax on the way back.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, that again, like we said, that a lot of people have them. A lot are buggered because of the surplus ammo was corrosive primers. And people didn't clean them, and because they're worthless guns, why would I look after it? I guess.
Right.
Well, they didn't care. So a lot of them have got rotten barrels, but yeah, you can still find stuff. There's a few importers bringing in some more surplus into the New Zealand market. A lot of Swiss stuff and that sort of stuff coming in nowadays too, which is good. But yeah, so it's popular. People want me to organise more of these events. It's just a lot of work.
I imagine it is a lot of work, but it sounds like a pile of fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had one stage where you had to so you'd bring your bayonet, and if not, if you didn't have a bayonet, we had a Mosin with a bayonet attached. You ran down a trench. They had like a zig and a zag, and you had to bayonet where you made some straw-filled sacks, like you see in the old training.
Right. Yeah.
Footage, and you had to bayonet your targets. And then either your rifle, if you were using your rifle, you'd bayonet yours, and if not, you'd pick up your rifle from there, and then you'd go and shoot your steel targets.
Engage other targets.
Yeah, but you had to bayonet them. Like you had to do it. Like we don't get too many females, but like boys, we like that shit, right? No matter how old you are, guys are like,
oh, for sure.
I want to stab that sack with a bayonet,
Exactly. Well, there's a reason that G.I. Joe is as popular as it is, right?
Right.
Do you guys watch Bloke on the Range, that YouTube channel?
A little bit, yep.
It seems like this is something I think that's really missing in Canada, and if it exists, they're just too quiet about it because I haven't really heard about it. But you see this in a lot of places in Europe, especially Switzerland, and it seems like Finland is into it, and the Netherlands seems to be into it. Norway seems to be into it. All this milsurp, types of competition, and obviously, it's a thing in New Zealand. It doesn't seem to be a thing here in Canada, and I don't know if that's just because we were able to keep our AR-15s for longer and we're right next to the US or what it is, but it sounds like a really fun time.
Well, and you look at the way tradition has gone for us in Canada. We've been so how do you say, I hate to use this, but diluted. Like there are so many cultures in Canada that I think we've been dispersed a little bit, in those types of people that would be into that are spread further apart and fewer. And I think Chris is right to a degree that we have access to different stuff, and we were able to hold on to our ARs a little longer, and that was funner, especially for the younger crowds and things like that. Yeah. So I think that factored.
I think a lot of us kind of get caught up in the American
flash.
Old West idea as well,
That
and
too. Yeah.
especially in the west of Canada. We kind of think more of the repeating Henrys and that.
Yeah,
sort of
you bet.
Winchesters than we do about the bolt action Enfields.
We have the cowboy action shooting,
and that exists. Yeah, we have that. Yeah,
you bet.
That's
It's pretty popular.
It's popular here in the pistol clubs.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and they have some offshoots into like long range, like buffalo guns a little bit as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But, I mean, that milsurp shoot was the only one of its kind here in New Zealand, for sure. And if any of your Canadian people who do events, I can send you all the plans if they want it.
Excellent.
I
think that'd be a hell of a good time.
I'm telling you, Kurt, we need to.
I think so.
Someday we need to organize one. We'll be the only ones in Canada doing it.
I'll get the jigsaw out to start cutting out the tank.
But first, I need a kit so that I can unsporterize my Enfield. I've got two of them. One from I got one from my father that was my grandfather's, and I got one from my father-in-law that was my grandfather-in-law's, and both of them were sporterized.
Is that right?
I've got an SMLE that was my wife's great grandfather's, but they were not far from me back post World War II. Again, guns were more acceptable. We had like rifle training for civilians in case of war. You'd have people knew how to use. And so the area I'm in is called Tikarangi, and there was the Tikarangi Rifle Defence Club, which you could never call something now, but I've got his rifle from that. I've got his shooting box, little scorecards, all original ammo that he had. Yeah, and the range was only about, maybe it's gone now, but it's maybe about 5 miles away.
No kidding.
Yeah, pretty cool. I like that stuff. I think it's
for sure. For sure.
Oh.
Well, you got
the people. Sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
No, go. I'm going down a different path here.
Well, I was actually going to too. I know the people want us to talk about suppressors.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes, I was going to say you have some toys there.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions. Specifically, where was it here? Mike was asking, what is the whole suppressor situation in New Zealand? Dan was asking, sure would be nice to have some. Or he was saying, I guess, sure would be nice to have suppressors. Tell us first of all. Tell us why you still have them. Tell us why your government seems to think that they're okay. Well, not that they're
but
not,
magazines aren't. Yeah.
What their reasoning is.
Yeah.
And tell us how awesome they are, because we don't get
on the legal side of things, these aren't really considered much. Now, there has been some changes in law on possessing parts if you're not a license holder, but I can go to the shop and buy a suppressor, or I can order it online. Online, I need to do a form to prove I'm a license holder, but I can just go to the shop, buy 10 suppressors for centerfire, rimfire, whatever. It's no big deal. When the bans come through in 2019, there was some in the really, because it was such rush legislation, it did mention suppressors, and that really quickly got removed. So police, they regulate the firearms law in New Zealand and essentially influence it as they see fit through various ways. They like suppressors because people ring up. So there'll be legal hunting or legal shooting happening, and people will ring up and complain about it. And the police know what's happening. They don't care about that shooting, but they care about the complaints. So they'll say, hey, have you thought about putting a suppressor on your rifle? Or, in fact, the day I got when I did my initial firearms license when I was early 20s or a teenager, there was actually rabbits running around on my lawn. I lived out in a different part of the country at that point, and the arms officer, we call him, said, man, you need your license quick. He said, you need a 22 and suppress it because there's a few houses around, right? So like he's watching like 15 rabbits. But yeah, so I can go and buy them. We've got a bunch of manufacturers in New Zealand who make them, and then we get a bunch of international, more European ones. We don't get the American ones because of the problems around what they've got with them. So
with ITAR for the exporting and everything.
Yeah, and they're so expensive, their ones. They're quite ridiculously expensive. So this is what one of your Hardy rifle I mentioned earlier. They make heaps of them. Very, very good. There's a company called DPT. So this is a muzzle forward. They also do an over barrel. These run you about 350 New Zealand dollars. Pretty straightforward. There's some markings on it for you. And they're just baffle sections, so you can remove and shorten it if you like, or add them on.
Oh, really?
Yep. Rimfire is the same from DPT. Where's the writing? There you go. Turn it the right way. Same thing. So this is what they call Magnum, Rimfire Magnum. So the standard 22 one just has a couple less barrels. I just buy the Magnum version because it's a little quieter. And you can also you can remove baffles and tune your, treat them like a tuner if need be.
Right.
Rimfire.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And they're just modular because obviously rimfire is, it's very, very dirty. It's only a little bit dirty at the moment, but you get a huge buildup of lead and other junk, depending on what ammo you run, especially subsonic. So you want to be able to clean your rimfire. The centerfire is not too bad. You can just sort of spray a bit of brake clean and whatever, hot water through them.
Right.
But yeah, rimfire.
Did you say brake cleaner and hot water?
Anything really, but the rimfire you need to get in there and either use a specific
with a solid.
Yeah. Like I use like a bore cleaner for rimfire, and I scrape a lot of it out. You end up getting like stalactites of lead hanging down in rimfire suppressors. if you don't clean them, and they will break apart, and then you've got like a little rattly thing inside your suppressor, which is some shit. So those are pretty cheap, right? Again, so that'd be like maybe 250 Canadian thereabouts.
Kidding.
So they're easy to get, and there's a bunch of other Kiwi manufacturers. These aren't the quietest, but they're pretty light, and you essentially, because these are an aluminium suppressor, you burn them out over time, especially with high rate of fire. So when we had the ARs, these would be sold, and they'd provide a stainless. First baffle would be stainless because we're just mag dumping everything, right, as you do. And then we get a lot of European stuff again. This is a Sonic, so I think they're made in Denmark. Same thing. They're a little bit heavier, this one. They do a lighter model as well. Same thing, removable baffles. The improvement this has over the New Zealand one is it's got little, you can see little keys in the baffles. It's kind of like a wrench for a suspension on a motorcycle. You sort of undo it. And because what happens if you don't clean them regularly, they'll lock up and be very hard to get undone. And so this one, it's just the initial chamber's got almost like a muzzle brake in it. Hard to see. There you go. And so that's the initial blast chamber, and then after that's just a series of baffles, similar to the New Zealand made one. And so you can pull them apart, clean them, but again, centerfied does not get nearly as dirty. If you run like particularly light loads, you can have unburnt powder build up in them if you run like a really soft load, slow burning powder. But in most cases they're pretty well fine. No, this is a AIM Sport. I just run this on my 223 trainer. So this is a bit nicer. I think this is made in Sweden from memory, somewhere. Made in Sweden.
Okay.
A little bit more expensive, not crazy. Got a bit of rubber finish on it.
Is that ring like a first stainless steel baffle like you were talking about? Or?
Yeah, it's where you disassemble it, but it's a bit seized up. And this one is an over barrel, so you can see the little hole inside. Yeah. That's the thread. So it's actually got about maybe 100 mil of over barrel, so it threads on about here.
Right.
And so that's how that's quite popular because hunters don't want long guns; they like their rifles to be quite short. So putting those on, but yeah, hunters big on suppressors as well. And then this is probably the one I like the most at the moment. It's quite heavy. It's a B&T. You familiar with B&T?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
They make a heap of submachine guns and all sorts of cool shit.
Yeah.
This is a muzzle forward. It's quite heavy. Not sure which model this one. Oh, this is the Starlight. I've got a few of them here. Very, very quiet, but heavy and very good recoil reduction. It's probably the best I've used, actually. It's a bit of an ugly looking thing, but it's like for competition style stuff. If you want to run suppressed, this is at the moment. It's my pick, and because it doesn't. It's like probably stainless steel. I don't know what it's made of, but that's pretty nice suppressor. But B&T is probably twice the price of these other domestic produced ones.
Yeah.
And you can again take it apart with a wrench and do whatever you need to do. Yeah, and then
so there's.
I have to say, and I think there's a lot of the listeners feeling the same way. At the moment I'm quite aroused. Really,
you're looking a little green there, Rooster.
Yeah.
A little green with envy.
Yeah. One thing I'll mention, I put down these B&Ts. The end you can it's a bush, and you can actually get different thread sets marked 5/8-24, which is very common for you guys.
Right.
And so you could put this like a 15-1 or an 18/1 and just swap out the thread. So you just buy like a bush and then run that suppressor on all your rifles.
Right.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Very nice.
That blows my mind that most of the rest of the world, like most of Europe, New Zealand, is Australia the same with suppressors?
Oh no, they treat that the same as a machine gun. Yep.
Oh, so they're fucked. They're fucked like we're fucked. Yeah.
You can get it on a real special pest control license only. Yep.
Pest control, Jesus. But most of the rest of the world recognizes, number one, that suppressors aren't like you see on fucking Sylvester Stallone movies or Schwarzenegger movies or all this kind of crap, number one. And number two, that they're actually a benefit to the community.
Everybody, yeah. Shooters
They're
and
literally everybody. Yeah.
Yep.
And you know, it's funny, we were talking earlier about how Ardern and Trudeau seem to be working from the same playbook as far as gun control goes. But, what would it take to get the two of them together and just say, hey, let's talk about these suppressors? And she's like, yeah, no, they're a good idea. And he's like, oh, really? Okay.
I think the issue being
if you say so.
I'm dreaming right now, and so is Kurt.
Our politicians don't know, especially the current government, don't know anything about firearms at all. So they lean on police. They say, "What should we do?" And police go, "We'll do this," essentially, which is not good in its own respect. But again, police are pro suppressor because they understand. I mean, the police shoot a lot too, right? They know how to carry their firearms. They have to be trained in them. Although they're not, don't get me wrong, they're not very good. But
that's pretty standard.
No, it's not their fault. It's their bosses. But they're big on it just because of the noise complaints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and most police themselves, the constables doing the job, they hunt and they sport shoot and stuff. So yeah.
Well, what's really funny about that? We hear where we hear so often about ranges and people who are operating ranges that they have the noise complaints and they have all these issues, and suppressors would completely solve them. But I don't know if it's because we have so much free, like geographically, we have a very large amount of space, and I don't know if that's what it is or what, but it's just absolute nonsense.
A little bit, I think. Beyond nonsense. Jesus. Like I don't know what the danger is with having
well, it's because they're literally this. They're this loud, Kurt. Pew.
Yeah.
Pew. They watch movies, right?
I will say the rimfire, because 95% of our competitors use naturally subsonic ammo. So with a 5 baffle, it is proper quiet in the bolt action. But anything centerfire, you can hear, right? But with the 22, man, it makes it so good. And that's what's as our cities expand into rural areas, and there's still people shooting rabbits, and their neighbors have got horses and stuff. They're able to do it and not scare stock or it just helps everyone, right? So it baffles me why they are a illegal.
Prohibited device. Well, and even in the United States, they require a tax stamp, don't they?
Yeah, that's an odd one, isn't it?
Which is also super weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike makes an interesting point. He says poaching is likely the main issue for banning them. I think he's talking about Canada, obviously, but but I mean, it's not like New Zealand or most countries in Europe won't have poaching issues either. But again, I suppose we have a much larger geographic area that people can poach.
Poaching in New Zealand's funny because it's different from a lot of the world, because I imagine a lot of poaching in different parts of North America is native species that you have to hunt with a tag or in season.
Yeah,
that's right.
Here, so we have large amounts of public land. You can hunt on it. You just have to get a permit. But literally, you go on a website and just print a form. It's nothing. It's just It's just essentially, if you've gone missing, they can probably just go, hey, he intended to hunt this area. So hunting is very accessible in New Zealand. A lot of people feed their families because you can do it all year, right? Which is cool. Love it. There's a lot of hunting on private land. And an issue there is, so poaching for us is if, I've got some wild deer on my farm and you sneak up to the boundary and shoot one and then drag it over your fence. And so people think of poaching, they think of people shooting a rhinoceros and cutting its horn off. Here it's shooting a pest animal without permission most of the time. So an issue they've seen more so in the south, but definitely here is, as thermal optics get more and more affordable and better, they're seeing more people traveling back roads through properties and shooting deer and stock off private property.
So it's not necessarily an out of season issue. It's a shooting them on property they're not supposed to be shooting them on issue. See, that's very different than Canada. I would wager, and Kurt, you might have your ideas on this, but I think that the majority of our poaching is out of season poaching, or you see a lot of. I follow our particular provinces. Conservation officers page on Facebook, and they're constantly making posts about somebody shooting, a female moose, for example,
Right.
a cow
Something
moose
that they don't
out of
actually have a
season.
tag for.
Yeah, or shooting like a cow moose while it was pregnant,
Yeah.
these sorts of things, and it and a lot of that has to do with being able to sustain the population. Some asshole goes around shooting all the female moose out there. Well, what's given birth to next year's, what's the word I'm looking for?
Next year's calf.
Calf. That's what it was. All I could think of was bebes. But yeah, next year's calves, right?
Yeah.
So obviously different issues, different regions.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be much talk about going after the thermal imaging or night vision but on the other hand, a lot of farmers have it now for pest control because you get these. Do you know what a fallow deer is? They're a smaller deer.
Like what's on the bed behind you or the couch behind you?
Yeah, that's a fallow deer I shot about.
Right.
Funnily enough, with a spotlight about 5 minutes
nice.
on private property. On private property. One thing I'll add in that public land, you are not allowed to hunt past dark on the public land. You can be in there,
but you can on private land.
You can on private land because it's private
land.
They're just pests. Yeah. So all of these introduced species. So we've got 7 species of deer. We've got feral goats. We've got tar, so Himalayan tar.
Yeah.
Those, which is the only place in the world you can legally hunt them is the southern Alps in New Zealand.
Wow.
We've got chamois or chamois in Austria. We've got those.
Another goat, isn't it?
Yeah, and they just live right up in the Alps, though.
Right. Yeah.
And then we've got feral pigs, which were bought by like James Cook when he first found the place. And so all these species are considered. Yeah. And they got spread. They got given to the natives, and they loved them because they had no mammals to eat, right? And they got spread right through the country, and bit of an issue. But these animals are all considered pest species by the government, so it's do what you need. Apart from, so we have our version of elk here, which we call wapiti, which is the Inuit name for elk, right? So you guys have Inuit people.
Yep.
I believe Roosevelt gave them to us of all people. Weirdly, all our stuff was it was all these like deals back about 120 years ago. But anyway, it's not a pure breed though. They crossbred with red deer. If you're familiar with red deer, the trophy species.
They crossbred elk with red deer.
No, the elk and the red deer did it on their own accord in the same area.
Oh,
so they had
That's a mutual.
They didn't lock them in a pen and make them do it. But,
They didn't put them in a pen and put on some Barry White and let nature take its course. I get it.
Yeah. So there's an area at the bottom of New Zealand's South Island called Fiordland, which is famous worldwide for hunting. It's a very hard place to hunt. A lot of huge rainfall, mountains, a lot of fjords come into it, so you can fish. It's very cool. That's where the wapiti were released, and when all these species were released, they were protected for a certain amount of time, and then they ended up getting out of control. But then red deer ended up coming to the area, making it happen with the cows, and but so now they actively cull out red deer out of these areas on purpose to try and. So essentially, the wapiti have been. Management of the wapiti has been given to an organisation called the Wapiti Foundation, and they do like pest control for other pests in the area that attack the native birds, and they cull out a certain amount of deer, and they try and keep the herd in a good condition because too many animals in an area reduces antler size and rah. So they try to cull out the reds, and they try to keep the wapiti in what's left of their pure condition.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's the only one that's sort of semi-regulated. And so in what we call the raw, or you guys would call the rut.
The rut.
What do you guys call it?
The rut.
It's rut. Yeah.
Yeah, they you have to get a ballot for the area. I think there's some public access
for the wapiti.
For the wapiti, yeah. So you'll pay, try for the ballot, you'll pay similar to a tag, and then you might not get it and just hard luck. Yeah, but then most other things, excluding maybe tar in their rutting season, you just go find your way in. Some areas have ballots in the raw or the rut, but a lot of it you just climb up or you get a helicopter in and you do what you got to do. Yep.
You get to hunt from helicopters too?
you get dropped off by helicopter.
Oh,
So
get
you'll
dropped
just-
off by okay.
Oh,
Okay.
you can helicopter hunt.
I
on
thought you were
private.
like shooting wild pigs, Texas style from a helicopter.
They do. So one of the ways you can still retain an AR-15 or other similar semi-automatic is with what they call a prohibited license. So pest controllers still have them for that, and some do. They helicopter cull. Yeah, they just chase them around and shoot them.
They do.
I don't see a legal reason you couldn't hunt out of one on private property, though. I don't think there is, apart from maybe like a working safety law. But
See, here, even on private property, you're not allowed to hunt from a vehicle.
You're right.
Oh no, we hunt from vehicles all the time. Sure.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is technically speaking, even on private property, we're not allowed to hunt. We're not even allowed to drive an ATV out to our hunting site.
Yeah.
Oh,
If we have our firearm with
We have
us,
no property rights here.
Yeah,
that's been made clear and reinforced.
That's right.
Lately. Yeah.
Well, and then what's crazy about that is we've got so many people in rural properties, they carry a firearm for wildlife, like predator control, and it's literally for their own safety. And if they're driving around with their firearm that is for predator control and they're not even hunting, but it's during hunting season, they could be fined for that. But if they do it not during hunting season,
it's fine.
I'll
no
get
issue. Yeah.
So we hunt off quad bikes, side by sides. This is more the pest control side, so private property.
Right.
Big stations and farms will we can shoot off horses. We can.
Yeah, Dan's saying, and he's right. We're not even allowed to use horses. Yeah,
Right.
What?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a marsupial here called a possum. I guess you've got a different type.
We've got
possum,
possums. Yeah,
these are a bit different. These are Australian
States,
possum.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
they
they
have
were-
like giant pouches and hop
They're little.
around, or
They're like
big
a little,
rat.
it's worth googling what they look. They're quite a cute creature, but
Okay.
they're protected in Australia, but they were introduced to New Zealand at some point in our short history, and they got out of control because of our mild climate, heaps of food.
oh yeah, they look
And
very
they-
different, don't they?
They destroy native bird habitats and stuff like that, and compete for food. So they're everywhere. Like I shot 2 outside my house down by my chicken coop the other day with the Voodoo, funnily enough. You got to hunt these things. So quite often you'll drive around these properties, spotlighting out the windows or using thermal, and you just shoot them with 22s or sometimes bigger guns. But there's a funny grey area we're allowed to shoot up into trees with possums, but not with other guns. Yeah.
Yeah, Blind Spotter has basically just summarized this whole episode for us.
Right.
On this episode, whose laws suck the least? There's a picture of the New Zealand possum, by the way.
Yeah, so it's from Australia, and they are.
Oh, that's
everywhere.
Australia. Okay.
Yeah,
very.
That's in New Zealand. I can tell by the foliage, but it's
Oh, okay. Yeah, very, very different from what we call a possum. Yeah.
and they carry a few diseases and stuff, but the fur is very valuable. They blend it with merino wool and export it all over the world. So teenagers will hunt them and pluck them and sell the fur. But that's a big thing we hunt out of vehicles here on private property is possums. Yeah.
Isn't that just so interesting, though? At the beginning of this show, essentially all of our Canadian listeners were listening to you speak and being like, well, thank Christ we're in Canada.
Right.
And now at the end of the show, everybody's like, I wish I was in New Zealand. I can have suppressors. I can hunt from an ATV. It's just such a hodgepodge. And I think it really illustrates the nonsensical nature of so many of our country's gun laws, is that you've got one progressive, I can't even call it progressive. You've got one hard left government that is like, no, this is cool. This is not cool. And then you've got the other hard left government that is like, well, no, the opposite is okay. And the opposite is not okay. And it's just, what is going on? We're sitting here having a conversation thinking that both of our governments are absolutely out to lunch.
Well, exactly. Like
So
you
our
said,
government
illustrates how much sense any of this shit makes.
Our current government want, as much as I'll admit it, they want all the pests gone. So
Not realizing that they themselves are the fucking pests.
Private firearms owners do the large bulk of culling. So, but a lot of hunters have a vested interest in keeping some populations stable, as in deer species and tar and stuff.
Sure.
So they did this government did a big cull on the tar a couple of years back, like quite a vicious one. But for the west coast of the South Island, there's not a lot down there, and it brings in a lot of revenue from foreign hunters. Because again, if you're a big time hunter, you can't do this anywhere else. So they fly into New Zealand, they pay a guide a fortune, they get flown up into the mountains, and they shoot these big majestic animals, and it's a big money thing. And but then they come in and they fucking machine gun them from helicopters, and so we got a foundation who looks after them, and they're going, hey, can you not target you not target the big bulls? Let's just reduce the nanny populations, because the population was a bit out of control, which is slightly the hunters' fault, because we'd leave the nannies and not target the smaller animals. But then they just fucking massacred everything and ruined a lot of these areas for now that it's opening back up to tourism. They're going to struggle to make money. So and these little towns rely on the hunting tourism. So, like you say, some things are good, some things are really bad. So it's
it seems to be that way everywhere. It's just different as to what's good and what's bad. Hey.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy. Well, I want to ask you. We're getting pretty close to out of time here, but we wanted to ask you. I'm going to pretend that it was me that came up with this idea, but it was Kurt. It was all Kurt that comes up with. He's the brains behind the operation, in case anybody's wondering.
The silent brain.
Yeah, I talk good. He thinks good. Anyway, we wanted to ask you what kind of shooting associations exist in New Zealand, and what different types of associations are there, and like how do they do their thing, and how are they advocating for the average gun owner in New Zealand?
We've got all the traditional shooting sports have sort of organisations, but a lot of them are struggling for membership because of the young guys don't want to shoot F class or bench rest. They want to shoot precision, or they want to shoot. Well, they did want to shoot 3-gun, stuff like that. So you've got all those associations. A lot of them have sort of got their head in the sand, in my opinion, on a lot of things. Right. A little bit of the FUD mentality with some of that shit. I mentioned earlier COLFO, which is
I love that FUD is a term even in New Zealand, by the way. Right. I love that.
Oh yeah. You get a lot of that, and then you've got big ones called the Deer Stalkers Association, which is a hunting club. They got each region has 1 or 2 branches. That's quite I'd say a reasonably powerful organisation. Again, I think in some issues they've got their head in the sand, and that doesn't affect me. So a little bit, no, they're okay, but anyway. And then you've got and as for the precision stuff, you don't really have a lot because it's a new sport. You sort of just fledgling. Yeah, well, you got like organisations like what I have, or like GPRE and these guys, and we sort of just one guy with a few volunteers who organise things. So we don't have any NRA or anything like that. In fact, in the previous legislation, they banned I'm not sure how that works, any involvement with the American NRA. They were paranoid that they were going to change our law here. Really? I don't know what the fuck they're on.
But the NRA's constitution prevents them from operating outside of the continental U.S. anyway, or not the continental, but outside of the U.S. anyway.
Yeah, no, that's stupid. Yeah.
This just shows you how little they know about what they're banning.
Yeah, you've got COLFO, which is your Coalition of Licensed Firearms Owners, which is more a legal only thing, which is pretty good.
Okay.
And a lot of these other clubs I've mentioned actually pay into that, and that they have sort of lawyers and a lot of volunteers who put in a lot of hours and chasing up police, and since the terror attacks, we've had a bunch of unjust raids on legal license holders, for varying degrees of stupidity on police side, and so they'll latch onto that, and they'll a lot of them have been old dudes in their 80s lately. The police just turn up and take all their guns. It's because recent one was because they said his eyes were failing a little bit in his driving exam, and we suspect he might have a tiny bit of dementia. So police just rolled in and took all the
You're
shit.
No way.
So that they'll try to look after stuff like that, or
Okay, so they'll advocate in those situations.
Mhm.
yeah, and provide advice and point you in the right. You want to use. We've got some specialty firearms lawyers and stuff you're better off to use, and
Okay.
yeah. So it's there, but it's definitely not what you see in other countries. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like it's a very interesting thing. This is my opinion, and I'm not speaking for the rest of our illustrious country or the rest of our gun owners when I say this, but I think that gun advocacy in our country has really changed since around 2015, and I genuinely think that it's because of the development of an organization called the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. And not that they're doing everything, because I don't think that they are doing everything, but I think that they really brought a solid public relations and organizational aspect
Definitely.
to firearms owners. And it's not just what they're doing, it's that they stepped up the game of the organizations that already existed.
Mhm.
And there's been some bad blood. There was a lawsuit over bullshit logos between the CCFR and an organization called the National Firearms Association, and there's some real stupid goofiness that was going on there.
Just territorial shit.
Territorial shit, exactly. And it looks like a lot of that is probably ending. The former president of the NFA has resigned, and now they've resolved this bullshit logo dispute. But I think that in the last 7 years, advocacy has really stepped up in our country. And I think despite the fact that we have the male Ardern running our country, it has made a very big difference. Barely male. I think that Beta, maybe like a Charlie male, bordering on Delta male.
More Charlie, yeah.
Anyway, I think that it has. I think that the state of gun ownership in Canada would be significantly worse if not for this recent development of better organization from advocacy groups in our country. And
it's really I see it as a more of a humanization of gun owners, if that makes any sense to you.
And that was one of the big campaigns that the CCFR started with. Was trying to humanify is not a word, but to reinstill in the general public the idea that gun owners are they're your average person. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're mechanics, they're lawyers, they're they're your lawnmower, your gardener, your
precious immigrants that we
exactly
covet so much here, right? There's tons of them that are into firearms.
And I think the point of mentioning that is, I hope, we pay a lot of attention in Canada to what's going on in New Zealand and what's going on in Australia. And, first of all, we're extremely happy that you guys are still allowed to have suppressors.
Yes.
And I'm extremely happy to learn about how a lot of your hunting laws are organized. I think that's very cool. And I think I can probably speak for the majority, if not all, Canadian firearm owners when I say this, that I hope that you guys are able to make some headway over the next couple of years, because you guys have taken an absolute shit kicking.
A bit of an ass raping there lately,
8 or 9 years, or however long it's been, 5 or 6, 7 years, whatever it's been. Graeme, if people wanted to follow you guys in New Zealand from Canada, pump it out. Tell us where they can find you on the webs.
Most of what I do, like I said, Facebook and Instagram. So it's just Taranaki long range shooting. That's the majority of stuff, and that'll probably link to our podcasts, and then the website. So that's probably the main place you'll find what we're up to. Pretty straightforward. There's a little bit of stuff on YouTube and stuff, but it all runs through Facebook anyway. I find that's the for domestic stuff, that seems to be the best. For international, like connecting with you guys and stuff, that's all Instagram. But again, it's all linked through Taranaki long range shooting.
Well, and obviously everybody listening to this is a podcast listener. And you guys have your own podcast. Tell us about that.
Less production value than yours, for sure.
Trust me, the production value is not high quality.
It's pretty low.
We don't have the video, which is kind of cool actually, having the video. We just purely audio only through Spotify and Apple and all those.
Mm-hmm.
We try to do 2 a month. A lot of it's competition stuff because it's a lot of what we do, but we do it about pest control. Like I said, we might go out and shoot 100 goats. So my co-host Mark, he's got a big property up the road. He did like 19 pigs in one day the other day. So thermal hunting. Yeah, and again, they destroy his farm. So it's me and him. We just talk shit really. We have guests on, again, other competitors or people in the industry who we think are interesting. And it's a similar thing. We actually, one thing I don't do is I don't really do politics much. So it's quite a rare thing for me to bag the government.
We're glad you broke your rule.
Oh yeah, well, again, it's only my rule, not yours. So I just post the terror attacks, it got real negative in the shooting community here, and that's what it was. I thought I'd try and be like somewhere you could go and just look at just like cool guns being shot and talk about
it positive.
So we try and do that stuff more so. Like I'll do a call to action if I need to around certain things, but
and let everybody know the name of your podcast.
Precision Unloaded podcast. And
why didn't we think of that?
It took me. I struggle for names. And it's there's about 40 something episodes there.
I'd like to say that we struggled for a name, but to be honest with you, I struggled with a name, and then Kurt just like off the cuff, he's like, "Here's like 25 names. Choose one."
Yeah. The early episodes, the audio is trash, so I'll just miss them. Would be my best.
It's all right.
I look at my the stats, and the first one's got freaking several thousand downloads, and it keeps getting more. I'm like, man, it sounds like we're talking in a toilet stall, it's that bad. Anyway, it's not great. I'm not good at editing stuff, but it's the audio is better.
Well, the reality is with gun-based podcasts, with how algorithms automatically go against us and all this sort of stuff, it's not about having a large audience; it's about having an engaged audience. I truly believe that.
I quite like the podcast. It's just a bit more, just talking shit with your friends, and
that's it,
and a bit less serious, and poking fun at each other. I like them. It's good fun.
Yeah, you bet.
Awesome. Well, Graeme, thanks for coming on. It's really, really interesting to hear about what's going on with gun owners in other countries and around the world, and appreciate you coming on. I think we had a great time, and hopefully maybe we'll check in with you again, and hopefully we'll get to see what's going on in New Zealand, and we'll cross our fingers here that the next time we talk there, we won't have to talk about our Dern, and and maybe we'll talk about you guys getting a few I don't know if we want to call them rights or a few things back. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Yeah. No, it sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Awesome. Kurt, do you want to take us home, buddy?
Sure. Well, folks, please check out the show at facebook.com/BS podcast. Leave a review. Let us know how we're doing. Also, if you like the content, please leave a like on the page and share so we can spread the wealth. You can email us questions as well, whether you need long-range shooting advice, mental toughness, self-defense coaching. That's all, Chris.
I don't even know why we have that in there.
It's kind of legacy.
It's legacy, yeah.
But send us an email. Give us suggestions for the show if you have them. Likes, dislikes, whatever. We're open to it all. info@bspodcast.ca.
Also, make sure you check out our website, which I'm sure you figured out already, is bspodcast.ca. You can find not only our latest episodes, video episodes, but you'll find our reviews. Lately, we've been working on a lot of reviews in relation to. Can you guys hear my dogs barking?
Yeah.
I think my wife's coming home.
Just mild.
Lately we've been working a lot on piecemeal reviews on the WK180C Gen 2. We're going to be doing a full review on that very quickly. We did a review on the Razer HD Generation 3,
Right.
which make sure you guys check that out on YouTube. Like Kurt did a very, very thorough and technical breakdown on that scope, which was really fun to edit, because like most of what he was talking about was like, I never even thought of that. So I'm glad I got
That's a
to.
great scope, man.
It was a lot of fun to edit that video, because you did a fantastic job on the technical aspects of breaking it down. I watched a whole bunch of other Razer Gen 3 reviews on YouTube, and nobody was like, it looks really good and it has a really nice reticle. And then
Really? I poached everything.
Oh, dude, everything you were like, you probably took everything from everybody and just put it all into one video, and it's just like the best technical piece on the
All I
internet
did was
right
read
now,
the
I think.
manual.
Well, you know what? I think it worked, and everybody else should check it out on YouTube. I think it's a great review, and obviously there's going to be more. We're going to be starting to work on the. I'm really excited about this. We're starting to work on the Sterling R18.
Yes,
You're going to start seeing some first looks reviews. I'm going to be looking at magazine tests, crappy ammo tests, accuracy tests, function tests. Very quickly with the WK180C, we're going to be seeing a takedown. I told everybody last week the piston broke on my WK180C. Haven't touched the gun since it broke. I'm going to video myself taking it apart for the first time since it broke. I'm going to put the whole shebang up on YouTube so everybody can see what happens if this happens to you and what you can do about it. So,
excellent.
We're just moving forward. We're putting out all kinds of crap. Really quickly,
We got a shoot coming up next weekend too. That'll be at the
right.
second Sapril, the 2-day match next weekend.
That's
so
what's
I'll
that
have some
one
more
called?
footage from that. God damn it! Is it the Cactus Cup? No, that was the first
Cactus
one.
Cup is the one we were at a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
I can't remember what it's called
night.
either. It's a 2-day event. It's in Southern Alberta Precision Rifle League.
Scheisse.
That's German for bleep. Doesn't matter. You look it up. While you look it up, I'm going to thank all of our sponsors: Shane and Steve from EM Precision, Miles, Carey, Cappy from Callsign 66, Duncan and Rob Bolt Action Coffee, Phil Odell at Odell Engineering, Doug and Niza at March Scopes Canada, Vanya and Carly with Apex Optics, Oscar with Ribstone Gunsmithing, and Mark with Trigger Tech, who we are just starting to work with. Thank you guys an immeasurable amount. Without all of your guys' support and without all of you guys watching us, we're just a couple of morons talking to an awesome guy from New Zealand with nobody listening. So thank you guys all. If you're still watching us and you haven't hit like or a thumbs up or whatever platform you're watching on, make sure that you do that. And did you find it? What's it called?
Join me at Prairie Classic at Sapril next weekend.
How did we not think of that? The Prairie Classic.
Well, you know what? I thought of it, but I thought it was the Cypress. I was thinking it was the Cypress Showdown. Very classic. Yeah, whatever.
Gotcha.
Anyway, yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm glad we got through that.
Until next week, folks. We'll see you all on the flip side. Have a great night.
This right here has the ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
You're listening to your weekly dose of BS, ballistically speaking. The Ballistically Speaking Podcast.